Welcome to the Popish Plot. I'm Nate.
And I'm Jessica.
Today, we're here for one of the last two VEASTER episodes. It was originally going to be one of Mike's videos, but as we mentioned earlier on in the week, Mike is currently experiencing some technical difficulties which prevent him from producing videos.
Yes.
Anyways, so Mike was going to be doing an episode on St. Joan of Arc, as today is the feast day of St. Joan of Arc.
Yes.
So, in his stead, we are going to attempt to do his Joan of Arc episode. Funny note, we don't have any of his notes.
No.
We probably could have gotten them, but we didn't ask. So, here we go. We're going to try and do Mike's episode, but without Mike's notes. So, it's really just going to be our episode on Joan of Arc. We're going to do it our way.
Well, yes. Like I said before filming, I am, super an expert on this because once in junior high for history class, I played Joan of Arc in a classroom activity because every single classroom activity I ended up dead in. Like our first activity was the Great Plague. You are a 56-year-old woman. I think I died of the plague and not just died because I was that old during the Middle Ages.
That's fair.
But anyway, we have a list of facts.
Yep.
We will be looking at.
So, for those of you who are not aware, St. Joan of Arc.
She was not Noah's wife.
That's, yeah, take that, Bill and Ted. She was born in the early 15th century, died still relatively early in the 15th century, as she didn't really live to be an old woman.
She lived to be about 19. As she was the child of farmers. We think she was probably born in about 1420, but we don't have the exact date.
So according to my notes here, it says she was the Maid of Orleans.
Yes, that was one of her titles.
Oh, okay. She began experiencing visions around the age of 13, and these included visions of the Archangel Michael, Saint Margaret, and Saint Catherine of Alexandria.
Yes, it could have possibly been a different Catherine. Because in what we know about her life, she just said Catherine, but it was largely agreed that it was Catherine of Alexandria that was probably who she, knew about and therefore was,
Gotcha. And she came to prominence as a part of the 100 Years' War, which, from what I understand, nobody called it that until after that.
Well, it would be really weird. It'd be like, it's the 95-year war. It's the 98-year war. Plus, I don't think it was exactly 100 years. It was so close to a century.
It was a really long war between England and France.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that she was alive during the 100 Years' War is important because if you know anything about Joan of Arc, you know that she helped...
The Dauphin.
Yes. Which is a French title, which either means a dolphin or the heir apparent or oldest son of the last king.
Oh.
And at the time that she, became prominent, France was losing horribly to England.
Yeah.
That is why he was a dauphin and not a new king. She was instrumental in getting the new king, who was the rightful heir in that his dad was the king, so he should have been the king, of Charles the Seventh, coronated.
And, of course, there's the part of her life that everybody knows about. Being burned at the stake.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe everybody doesn't know about that. That's the only part that I definitely know. That and the visions and the 17-year-old girl leading a army, which everybody originally thought was going to be crazy because what does she know about running an army? She's a 17-year-old farmer's daughter.
Yes, well, there are differing things on whether she actually did military stuff or whether she was more of like a symbol. Yes, after she helped turn the tide of the war, she eventually got captured by a group of French that were loyal to England and then turned over to the English. Where she was charged with numerous charges. I've seen things up to there was actual 70 charges they had against her.
Wow.
But most of them boil down to she's a witch, she's a heretic, and she's a crossdresser.
Well, I mean, there was that whole thing about her wearing pants, but from what I understand, wearing a dress out on the battlefield just really doesn't work.
not that well. And technically, as this was a heresy trial, it was a church inquisition. However, it was noted for disobeying multiple rules for an inquisition. This included that the standards of evidence weren't actually high enough to actually put her on trial.
No.
She did not have a legal advisor, because legally you get a lawyer when you're the accused in an inquisition. Like, even back in the old medieval ages.
Okay.
They threatened witnesses or intimidated them. They were required to have impartial or balanced judges. So it was kind of like a jury worth of judges versus one.
Okay.
So in this case, if, half of them were British and half of them were French, that would count because it's balanced.
But since all of them were British.
But all of them were British, they also could get, someone from some other country that's not involved to be in charge of it. But they had all British people.
Okay.
She was also not sent to a church prison.
Okay. I have a feeling this is going to get rather dubious as to where they send her.
Well, the issue why that is important is because she was a female.
Yes.
So if she had been in a church prison, they would have had nuns be the guards. But she was sent. They say secular prison, but it really seems like a
like a military
prison, because she was guarded by soldiers. And so that later on goes to part of the issues with her case.
Okay.
But beyond all that, the transcripts we do have were largely considered to be falsified. So even what we have of them trying to paint it like she was such a horrible person aren't that good at it. For example, they were actually used for her canonization process.
Wait. The transcripts of the trial against her were used by the people who were attempting to show her life of saintly virtue. Yes.
Apparently, they could only, falsify things so much. So, they didn't make up that she's like, yeah, I'm a witch, and started flying around on a broomstick or something.
That's good, because you can't fly on a broomstick.
Yes. And also part of the issue was heresy is only a capital offense if you've already been, found guilty of heresy. Like, you become a heretic one time, they'll usually have some level of punishment to, try to convince you not to do that. But then you go on your way, and it's only after you become a heretic again that it can be a capital crime.
Because at that point, they turn you over to the civil authorities. And
well, simply, you need a chance of repent, because, you couldn't be a heretic and
you can't be a heretic without having a chance to repent. No, you're right, because you have to know that what you're saying is a heresy, and that if you continue to do this, yeah.
So they they ultimately went to get her on that she was cross-dressing again, because first charge is you were cross-dressing in the military. Then she went to trial. She was wearing dresses for a while and went back to wearing men's clothes.
But I heard that she didn't actually change back to the dresses, because if she were to have gone and done that, that's where it would have become a more serious offense.
Well, the issue is people that actually knew her noted that she only wore men's clothes when she's in battle.
Okay.
When she was in a camp filled with men.
Yeah.
When she was crossing enemy territory. And when she was in the military prison.
Okay.
Every other time she was wearing dresses. So when she started out, she was wearing a dress. But then from what we can get from her story, because again, a lot of things are falsified and stuff, either A, they took the dress from her and wouldn't give it back. We're going to wash this and, no, it's gone. And or B, she was attacked by a guard, and the men's clothing was such that it tied in all together, making it very hard to actually take it off quickly.
Yeah, there you go.
So therefore, that was a issue of protection.
Yes.
And even in St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa, they note that, cases of cross-dressing should be evaluated based on context, and any case in which it is a necessity or
the clothing is being worn as some form of protection.
Yes. As if you actually go throughout most of history, there was many times in which women were wearing clothes we'd consider men's clothes because they were out, working fields and stuff, and, trying to do this in what women's clothes was could be deadly.
Yeah, there's that.
So, although, nowadays we look at it and go, well, cross-dressing is a stupid charge for a woman. Women can wear pants all the time. It's not a big deal. Even taking it seriously at that time, what she did wouldn't have been counted as being, an inappropriate cross-dressing.
Interesting. I do like that one famous quote that she's known for, though. When she was asked if she was in God's grace, she answered, "If I am not, may God put me there. And if I am, may God so keep me. I should be the saddest creature in the world if I knew I were not in his grace."
Yes, because not only is it a good quote, if you knew the legal system at the time, it's also a lot like when Pharisees asked Jesus questions, hoping to trip him up.
They wanted her to say that, yes, she was, so that then they could go and say, but you can't possibly know that.
Or if she says no, then
clearly you must have done something wrong. Yes. There's no right answer for it.
One of the main things that people who are, less interested in Joan of Arc being a saint will argue about is a few days before she was actually killed, she signed a document which was renouncing her actions and beliefs. However, she was illiterate.
Okay, I mean, signing is just making a mark, but it seems like realistically you could have told her anything that it was anything you would have wanted her to sign, and if she couldn't read it to know better.
Yes, she didn't have a lawyer. Many sources say that she was being threatened at the time, and even though she couldn't read the document, there's evidence that they then went and forged a different document and copied her X or mark or whatever to make it say that she signed something even worse than whatever she did that she couldn't read anyway.
My goodness. So this I was not aware of, but
okay.
So after they burned her at the stake, they then decided that they needed to burn her not one more time, but two more. So they burnt her to death, and then took the remains. Said, we should make sure that those are good and properly disposed of, and burn them two more times.
Well, if you know anything about historic cremating, just burning someone at the stake, is it enough to actually destroy everything?
No, it's not.
Because even at the time, the English were worried that the French would go and consider her a martyr and take relics. So they wanted to make sure they destroyed everything, which is why after they burned her 3 times, they then threw her in the River Seine. So that way you couldn't even be like, well, this ash might be her or something that,
Gotcha. All right. So, was there anything else that we should know about today's saint, Saint Joan of Arc?
Well, I thought we'd go over how she became a saint after being, killed for the heresy of wearing pants.
Okay.
Shortly after her death in 1456, an inquisitorial court was authorized by Pope Callias III to examine the trial. This was done in part by her.
I think you mean Pope Calixtus III.
That sounds more Latin than what I said, right?
Yes.
This was done in part because her actual mother went and said, "Can you go and look at it?" Another part because she attempted to go and write to the Pope, I assume by having some friend who was literate.
Sure.
About the various wrongs of the trial, like as far as actual procedural things, and those got, taken by the British and never made it to him during her lifetime.
Of course not.
And the fact that other people who were inquisitors went and said this was not done correctly.
Wow, that's definitely not a good sign when your coworkers look at the way you did your job and said, "Yeah, I'm gonna have to go talk to the boss." Yeah,
well, the British people in charge of it were, largely much more loyal to their part of the state that the church is seen by the railroading.
Yeah.
But anyway, so This pronounced her innocent. All charges were, dropped, and she was declared a martyr.
Yeah. So now she's a blessed. Well, then she was a blessed. Because now she's a saint. But
it was unofficially. Officially, she was beatified in 1909. But even well before that, in the 16th century, she was a symbol for the Catholic League, which was a group that was largely fighting a religious war against groups like the Huguenots in France. And in 1803, she was declared a national symbol of France by Napoleon.
Okay.
Also, somewhere along the line, she became one of the 9 secondary patron saints of France.
Oh.
I mean, I think there's 2 that are like the head saints of France. This group includes people like Saint Denis, Saint Martin of Tours, and Saint Teresa of Lisieux.
Yes. That's pretty cool. So, go down below, hit the subscribe button and the bell next to it so you get notified whenever our next episode is coming out, which after tomorrow won't be necessarily every day. Hit that like button and make sure you go down below to the comments section and, maybe share whether or not St. Joan is whether or not you have a particular devotion to St. Joan. Maybe you have another saint that you have a particular devotion to and you would like to see us do a piece on them.
Maybe because you're stuck in quarantine, you're going to celebrate the Feast of St. Joan of Arc in an interesting way, like wrapping a fashion doll in tinfoil for fake armor, or doing step aerobics like that movie that was historically incorrect.
Yes, with Socrates.
Socrates loves baseball.
Loves baseball.
And until next time,
remember to live your faith.
Love your faith.
And share that love.
I do love when they all went to the mall.
Yes, with Socrates.
Socrates loves baseball.
Loves baseball.
Saint Teresa of Lisieux.
Lisieux. Yes.